The autistic nervous system, why anxiety shows up the way it does. Dual vignette experience. Vignette A, the autistic partner. Evan had spent the whole week imagining the comfort of date night with Mara, the soft glow of a restaurant booth, the warm familiarity of her voice, the relief of not having to think about work for a few hours. He loved the idea of these evenings, even if the reality of them often became complicated. As soon as they stepped through the restaurant doors, the atmosphere shifted in his body before he could put words to it. The overhead lights flickered at a frequency few people would notice, but his nervous system registered each fluctuation like a strobe. Conversations from nearby tables merged into a wall of chaotic sound. The clatter of dishes behind the bar sent sharp pulses through his chest. He felt the room closing in, not physically, but neurologically. When the server asked if they were ready to order, Evan tried to form a sentence. But the words felt locked, as if the air itself had thickened around him. His mind stalled under the pressure of too much input, and all he could manage was a clipped, "Give me a minute." He could hear the tension in his own voice, but had no control over it. Mara's face tightened subtly. A flicker of hurt he recognized, but didn't have the bandwidth to address. He wanted to reassure her, to explain the sensory assault happening inside his body, but explanation requires access to language, and language was no longer available. So he withdrew, not out of disinterest, but out of survival. Later in the car, Evan stared forward, feeling the familiar weight of shame. Once again, he had failed at something the world insisted should be simple, sitting in a restaurant and being present with someone he loved. He didn't understand that what had happened wasn't a personal failure, but a predictable neurological response, the autistic nervous system overwhelmed beyond capacity. Vignette B, the neurotypical partner. Mara had entered the restaurant hopeful. These nights were rare, something she looked forward to because they gave her a chance to reconnect with Evan outside the stress of daily routines. She wanted closeness, conversation, maybe even laughter. But almost immediately, she sensed his withdrawal. He became quieter. His shoulders stiffened. His responses felt mechanical. She tried to stay calm, but confusion grew underneath her smile. Was he upset? Was he bored? Had she done something wrong? When he froze at the server's question, she felt a stab of embarrassment. That awful sense of being the only one at the table who didn't know what was going on. She also felt a wave of loneliness, the kind that came from trying so hard to create intimacy only to watch it evaporate without explanation. She wished he would look at her, or say something reassuring, or let her in. But he stayed silent, and she stayed hurt. On the ride home, her quiet tears slid down her face in the dim light. She loved Evan deeply, but she didn't know how many more nights like this she could endure. She didn't understand that his withdrawal had nothing to do with her and everything to do with what was happening inside his overloaded nervous system. Autistic neurology is not a variation of the neurotypical nervous system. It is a fundamentally different architecture. Sensory signals arrive more intensely and with less filtering. The autistic brain often processes more raw data at once, and the mechanisms that buffer, soften, or gate this information in neurotypical individuals operate differently here. This creates a world in which sensory input that others barely notice can feel sharp, intrusive, or chaotic. During moments of overload, the amygdala, the brain's threat detector, activates quickly and intensely. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, which helps regulate language, decision-making, and emotional insight, becomes harder to access. Words disappear. Processing slows. Emotions rise but become harder to name. The body shifts toward survival mode. Shutdown is not a choice. It is the nervous system protecting itself. Auditory input becomes nonlinear, meaning sounds stack rather than blend. Transitions grow harder. Small decisions feel monumental. And because the autistic brain processes information differently under stress, even a loving partner's voice can become another layer of input the system cannot absorb. Anxiety, then, is not a reaction to one isolated moment. It is the body's attempt to cope with a world that often arrives too fast, too loud, or too unpredictably. The ASD traits at play in this chapter. Several core autistic traits contribute directly to anxiety in scenarios like Evan and Mara's. Sensory hypersensitivity can make environments feel hostile long before the autistic individual consciously realizes why. Difficulties filtering input amplify internal noise. Literal thinking and linear processing become strained when the social world moves too quickly or asks for immediate response. Shutdown emerges when the cognitive load exceeds capacity. These traits are not flaws. They are neurological realities. When misunderstood, they can create cycles of shame for the autistic partner and cycles of hurt for the neurotypical partner. When understood, they reveal a clear logic behind moments that once felt confusing or personal. How these traits create anxiety in adults. Anxiety begins long before either partner is aware of it. The autistic body reacts to overload first, often with a spike in internal pressure that feels physical, mental, and emotional all at once. The inability to articulate what is happening compounds the fear. When communication collapses, internal narratives rush in to fill the silence. The autistic partner may think, "I'm failing. I'm broken." The neurotypical partner may think, "They don't want me. I'm losing them." The truth is far simpler and far kinder. The autistic nervous system panics when overstimulated or caught in unpredictability, and the shutdown is an attempt to regain stability, not an attempt to shut the partner out. How these moments are misinterpreted in relationships. When an autistic partner becomes quiet, distant, or rigid, the neurotypical partner often interprets it through relational logic. Silence feels like disinterest. Lack of expression feels like coldness. Withdrawal feels like rejection. But the autistic partner is not withdrawing from the person. They are withdrawing from the environment. Unfortunately, without shared understanding, both partners walk away wounded. One overwhelmed, the other feeling unwanted. Once couples understand the neurological reality behind these moments, compassion replaces confusion, and solutions replace spiraling narratives. Tools for the autistic partner. For autistic adults, the first step is noticing the early signs of overload. The subtle shifts before shutdown fully takes over. These might include mental fuzziness, irritability, visual narrowing, or a desire to escape. Recognizing these cues allows you to communicate before overwhelm peaks. Short, simple phrases become powerful tools. "I'm overloaded. I need a moment. Too much noise." These small signals preserve the connection even when more complex communication isn't possible. Preparing predictable elements in advance, such as choosing quieter environments, previewing menus, or planning transitions, can significantly reduce anxiety. None of these strategies are crutches. They are accommodations that align with how your nervous system works. Tools for the neurotypical partner. For the NT partner, the most supportive action is separating behavior from meaning. Instead of interpreting withdrawal as rejection, it becomes easier to see it as a sign of overload. Asking gentle, structured questions helps. Is this sensory, or is this one of those moments where you need quiet? These questions provide clarity without pressure. Reducing verbal load during distress is also enormously helpful. Over-explaining or seeking immediate emotional resolution increases cognitive demand. Short, calm, predictable responses support regulation far more effectively. Understanding that none of this is about you, even when it impacts you, is one of the greatest acts of love a neurotypical partner can offer. A joint script practice for connection. Many couples find relief in practicing simple dialogue outside moments of stress. For example, autistic partner might say, "When I shut down, it's because I'm overwhelmed, not because I don't care." The neurotypical partner might respond, "Thank you. When that happens, I feel uncertain, but I want to support you. Let me know what helps." Practicing these exchanges in calm moments builds a foundation of safety that can be accessed during difficult ones. A micro-connection ritual for daily life. A 3-minute evening check-in can transform the emotional landscape of a relationship. The autistic partner briefly names their sensory or emotional load from 0 to 10. The neurotypical partner names their sense of connection from 0 to 10. Together, they choose a tiny action to nurture either regulation or connection. These rituals accumulate into resilience. A short case study. Before and after understanding. Before learning about autistic shutdown, Evan believed he was failing Mara, and Mara believed Evan was uninterested in her. Their arguments centered on misunderstandings rather than needs. After learning the structure of the autistic nervous system, their interpretations changed. Evan learned to speak earlier in the overwhelm cycle, and Mara learned to see the difference between disconnection and overload. Conflicts diminished dramatically and closeness increased because both partners finally understood the hidden layer behind difficult moments. Common pitfalls couples should be aware of. Couples often stumble when they assume the other person sees the world the way they do. Autistic partners may feel broken or ashamed. Neurotypical partners may feel invisible or unwanted. Both may assume the other should just know. Overwhelm becomes conflict when silence fills the space that understanding should inhabit. Recognizing these patterns helps prevent unnecessary pain. Chapter summary, thinker version. The autistic nervous system processes more input with less filtering, especially under stress. Overload creates anxiety, and anxiety can lead to shutdown. Shutdown is not rejection. Predictability supports regulation. Simple communication prevents misinterpretation. Understanding the nervous system helps both partners stay connected during difficult moments. Reflection prompts for both partners. For the autistic partner, what sensations or situations overwhelm you fastest? What signals show up before you shut down? What short phrase feels easiest to use when overwhelm begins? For the neurotypical partner, which behaviors have you misinterpreted in the past? How might understanding overload shift your emotional response? What helps you stay grounded when communication becomes difficult? For both, what small ritual could help you reconnect after moments of overwhelm? Optional mini homework. The autistic partner identifies 3 recurring triggers. The neurotypical partner reflects on 3 moments they misinterpreted. Together, they choose one rescue phrase or plan to use during the next challenging situation.
Would you like to schedule a paid private coaching session? This will be in the form of a face-to-face Zoom call. Underneath any of my videos, you'll see this Calendly link. If you click on that link, it'll open up my calendar. You can pick the available days and times that works for your schedule. You'll get a follow-up email immediately after purchasing a session that will have the Zoom link that coincides with the day and time that you picked. I will get an email too that you scheduled a session, and I will be available on that exact day and time, and we will talk. I look forward to working with you.